Picture a long wooden desk in the registry room on Ellis Island on a cold morning in the autumn of 1907. The hall is loud and the ceiling so high the noise goes up and never comes back down. A man in a federal uniform stands behind the desk with a great flat ledger open in front of him. Beside him stands an interpreter. A woman reaches the desk carrying a child, a bundle, and a numbered tag pinned to her coat. And here is what does not happen next. He does not ask her name and write it down. He cannot. The page was filled in weeks earlier and 4,000 miles away in a ticket agent's office in Hamburg or Antwerp or Liverpool by a clerk who worked for a steamship company and not for the United States government. Her name is already on the paper. His job is to look at her, look at the line, and decide whether the two match. And here is the part almost nobody tells you. The story about the tired clerk who could not spell your great-grandfather's name and shortened it on the spot is not how that building worked. It could not have been. Trump, Warner, Bronson, Warhol. Names you have known your whole life, every one of them changed, and not one of them changed by an immigration inspector. So this is the list. 15 surnames, counting down. For each one, where the name truly came from. One human story you will not forget. The documented descendants, named only where the records carry them, and in every case who really changed the name, and when and why. Number 1 is a name you have sung. So watch all the way down and check your tree as we go. Now the machinery, because once you have seen it, the myth cannot survive. Philip Sutton, librarian in the Milstein Division of Local History and Genealogy at the New York Public Library, set it out in 2013. The manifests he wrote were completed by steamship company employees in Europe before the voyage, when passengers bought tickets. The inspector checked the people moving past him against that list. He verified. He did not record. Marion L. Smith, then senior historian of the United States Immigration and Naturalization Service, traced the form itself in the National Archives journal Prologue in 1996. The Act of 1893 required immigrants listed in groups of no more than 30 to a page, and Sally Ann Amdur Sack-Pickus, writing in the journal Avotainu in 2009, found where the ink came from. Ticket agents in Hamburg, in Antwerp, and Liverpool took down the details, and steamship company clerks compiled the lists from what the agents sent them. When a relative in America had paid the fare in advance, and that is how chain migration worked, the name came from the sponsor and not from the immigrant. By Smith's figures, 1/3 of the immigrant inspectors at Ellis Island were themselves foreign-born. The station kept a corps of interpreters for the rarest tongues. One of them was Fiorello LaGuardia, later mayor of New York, who said afterwards that immigrants shut out as mentally defective were often only being badly translated. And the standing rule, in Smith's words, was that an inspector was not to change the name found for any immigrant unless the immigrant asked and the original was shown to be in error. Vincent J. Canato, of the University of Massachusetts. Boston reduced it to one line in American Passage, his History of the Island published in 2009. Names were not changed there because inspectors never wrote down the names of incoming immigrants. 12 million people were inspected at those gates between 1892 and 1924. There is one case, and it proves the rule. In October of 1908, a 50-year-old passenger arriving from England was entered on the manifest as Mary Johnson, after officials found the traveler had crossed in male attire. Frank Woodhull had lived as a man in California for 15 years. He told the Board of Special Inquiry that to a woman only a few callings are open, and they are the grinding, death-dealing kinds of work. The board admitted him, and he lived out his life as Frank Woodhull. The only name that island ever forced onto a record was the old one. Congress knew exactly what was happening. The Basic Naturalization Act of 1906 built a name change field into the federal forms because, as Smith says plainly, it was a well-known fact that immigrants did change their names, usually within 5 years of arrival. The change was real. The place was the courthouse, and the story itself comes from a film. The historian Kirsten Vermaglich finds the idea rare in print before about 1970. Then came The Godfather Part 2, where a clerk renames the boy Vito Andolini as Vito Corleone. One last thing before the countdown. Names in America did not change once. They drifted. A family can appear 4 ways in 4 records because a census taker heard it and a printer said it in type. And the original paper is gone. Smith documented that once the records were microfilmed, the originals were sold for pulp in 1948. 3 railroad cars of paper went to the mill. So try every spelling you can imagine. Now, watch for your own name. Number 15, Trumpf. The root is Middle High German, Trump, a drum or a trumpet. Friedrich Trump was 16, a barber's apprentice who did not want the trade when he sailed on the steamship Eider in 1885. He was later expelled from Bavaria for emigrating to evade military service. His son was Fred Trump. His grandson is Donald Trump, and Ellis Island did not exist in 1885. Friedrich landed at Castle Garden, listed on the manifest as Frieder. Trumpf. Gwenda Blair traces the older form, Drumpf, changing to Trump in Karlstadt by the end of the 17th century. Check your tree. Number 14, Wansol, a Polish name from Krasnosielsk in Congress, Poland. Benjamin Wansol was a shoemaker, and the genealogist Doug Sinclair rebuilt his crossing. Hamburg to Liverpool on the Chester in 1888, then Liverpool to Baltimore on the Polynesian. His wife followed the next year, and the family became Warner in Baltimore. Their sons Harry, Albert, Sam, and Jack founded Warner Brothers, and Sam, who drove the sound project, died the day before The Jazz Singer opened. Benjamin landed at Baltimore 4 years before Ellis Island opened. Wrong port, wrong decade. Check your tree. Number 13, Gelbfish. Yiddish and Polish. Gelb, yellow, and fis, fish. Literally, yellow fish, an ornamental name of the kind taken when Jews were ordered to register surnames. Shmuel Gelbfish, born in Warsaw, walked across Europe at 16 and sailed for England. In 1898, his relatives in Birmingham renamed him Samuel Goldfish, and in 1899 he sailed from Liverpool and came ashore at Philadelphia. In 1918, he petitioned to become Samuel Goldwyn, fusing Goldfish with Selwyn. He is the only man in Hollywood who kept the surname of a company that later threw him out. His grandson is the actor Tony Goldwyn. He never passed through Ellis Island at all. Look for it. Number 12, Lauter, German for pure or clear. Lauder is something else entirely, a habitational name from Lauder in Berwickshire, in the Scottish borders. Josephine Esther Menser was born in Corona, Queens, above her father's hardware store. In 1930, she married Joseph Lauter, and shortly afterwards the couple changed the surname to Lauder. She mixed face creams her Hungarian uncle taught her to make and sold them in salons. Her sons Leonard and Ronald Lauder built it into a giant, and the family holds it still. The family story says they were correcting a misspelling from Austria. The records do not settle that, and Lauter is an ordinary Austro-German surname. Check your tree. Number 11, Johansson. And this is not really a surname at all. It is a patronymic, son of Johann, and Sweden was so saturated with them that the state legislated hereditary names. August Johnson was a blacksmith's helper for the Chicago, Burlington, and Quincy Railroad at Galesburg, Illinois, and the payroll office had so many August Johnsons that his pay went astray. So he renamed the whole family Sandberg, and his children later made it Sandburg. His son Carl, in his own account in Always the Young Strangers, asked at school to be called Charles, and admitted he could no longer recall why. He won 3 Pulitzer Prizes. No official took that name. A railroad ledger did, before Ellis Island existed. Check your tree. Number 10, Rockne. Norwegian, from Voss, and it is a farm name. Knut Larsen. Rockne decodes as Knut, son of Lars of the Rockne farm. Lars Knutsen Rockne won first prize in the carriage competition at the Chicago Exposition of 1893 and stayed. He anglicized himself to Louis Rockne, and the farm became the family, with a C in it. His son was Knut Rockne of Notre Dame, killed in a Kansas field in 1931. No clerk added that C. A Norwegian farm name was not a fixed legal surname to begin with. Look for it. Number 9, Ozimov. Russian, from the Smolensk region, and the root is the winter-sown grain. The name means, literally, of the winter rye. The family reached New York in February of 1923, and the father chose the letter S himself, believing that in English an S between 2 vowels is pronounced like a Z, as it is in German. Isaac Asimov explained it in 1979. Take 3 simple English words, has, him. Of, say has him of in the ordinary fashion, leave out the 2 H's, and you have Asimov. Almost nobody in America has ever pronounced it Asimov. Check your tree. Number 8, Benedetto. Italian, from the given name, meaning blessed. The English form of that same Latin root, by way of Norman French, is Bennett. So it is not a mangling at all. John Benedetto emigrated in 1906 from the hills above Reggio Calabria, from the Greco, the Greek-speaking minority of Calabria. He died when his son Anthony was 10, and Anthony said his father used to sing to him from a Calabrian hillside. And in 1949, Bob Hope, who had come through Ellis Island as a 4-year-old English boy with his surname untouched, heard him in a Greenwich Village club and shortened Benedetto to Tony Bennett. One immigrant renamed the son of another in a nightclub 41 years later. Check your tree. Number 7, Kairuz, Lebanese Arabic, Maronite Christian, from Bshari in the north. The origin of Kairuz itself is not settled, and we will not invent one. He was born Amos Muzyad Yaqub Kairuz, and Yaqub is simply the Arabic form of Jacob. In America, the family read their patronymic into English as Jacobs, and the boy performed as Amos Jacobs. In 1940, he was broke in Chicago with a pregnant wife and went back to the nightclubs after swearing he had quit. He was ashamed. So he built a name out of 2 of his brothers, purely so his family would not learn where he was working. Danny Thomas. In 1962, he opened St. Jude Children's Research Hospital. Look for it. Number 6, Boiardi, an Emilian surname of long standing near Piacenza. The root is disputed, and we will leave it disputed. Ettore Boiardi began work at 11, peeling potatoes at the local restaurant. He arrived at Ellis Island in May of 1914 and cooked at the plaza. And here the whole myth turns inside out. His American customers could not say his name, so he changed the spelling himself, phonetically, and printed it on the label. Boiardi. He spelled it out for Americans deliberately, 10 to 15 years after he landed in Cleveland. He came through the island with his name intact. Check your tree. Check. If you have already heard your family name in this countdown, or if you are still waiting and quietly hoping it is coming, take 1 second to subscribe to Anglo Origins. Every week we trace the bloodlines and the surnames that built the English-speaking world. Now, let us keep counting down. Number 5, Buchinskas. Lithuanian, from the Polish Buczynski, from Buk, the beech tree. Charles Dennis Buczynski was born in Ehrenfeld, Pennsylvania. His father was a Lipka Tatar from southern Lithuania, from a Muslim-descended community settled there since the 14th century. His mother could not afford milk, so the baby was fed warm tea instead. The father died when the boy was 11, and he went into the mines. He went to school in his older sister's dress because there was nothing else. He kept Bukinski until 1954. Then, at the height of the House Un-American Activities Committee hearings, his agent told him a Russian-sounding name would end his career. The name survived Lithuania. It survived the mine. It did not survive an agent's office. Check your tree. Number 4, Varkola. Rusin. Not Slovak, not Polish, not Ukrainian, though the village is in what is now northeast Slovakia. The etymology is unknown. The story here is one letter. Andrei Varkola left Mikova in 1912 by most accounts to avoid conscription, went down a coal mine, and settled his family in Pittsburgh. In May of 1942, in the week his youngest boy was to graduate from home school, he died of tubercular peritonitis, contracted, the family believed, from contaminated water underground. At 8, that boy had been bedridden with rheumatic fever, cutting Hollywood faces out of magazines and pasting them into scrapbooks. Around 1949, the final letter A fell away, and he went to New York as Andy Warhol. His brothers Paul and John Warhola kept theirs for life. Look for it. Number 3, Anagnostopoulos. From the Greek anagnostis, the reader, the lector who reads the scripture aloud in the Orthodox liturgy, plus the Peloponnesian ending Paulos. Anagnostopoulos means son of the man who reads aloud, Theophrastos. Anagnostopoulos emigrated from Messenia in 1897 by most accounts, settled in Schenectady, changed his own name to Theodore Agnew, and opened a diner. Then Baltimore and Prosperity, until a bank failed in 1931 and took the family's savings. The former restaurant owner sold fruit and vegetables from a roadside stall. His son was Spiro Agnew, 39th Vice President of the United States, who resigned in 1973, pleading no contest to tax evasion. And the change was his own, made upstate in Schenectady, and not at any pier or gate. A clerk at a desk does not produce that. A father does. Check your tree. Number 2, Danielovich. An East Slavic patronymic, son of Daniel, out of what is now Belarus. Herschel and Brina Danielovich settled in Amsterdam, New York. Their only son was Isur. And here is the cleanest proof in the video. An uncle was already in America and was already using the surname Demski. So the family took the name their relative had already adopted, because that was the name the family in America already answered to. No official chose it. An uncle chose it years earlier. In America, the father became a ragman, buying rags and scrap for pennies from a cart. He drank, and he stayed a stranger to his son. That son wrote later that the ragman was on the lowest rung of the ladder and that he was the ragman's son. In 1941, Izzy Demski became Kirk Douglas. His son is Michael Douglas. Check your tree. And number 1, Balin. We have saved this one for last because this correction matters most. Balin is a matronymic, a surname taken from a mother and not a father, from the Yiddish name Baal. And here is the sting. Berlin has no connection to it whatsoever. He did not shorten his name. He was handed a different one. The Balins, a family of 9, reached Ellis Island in September of 1893. Israel Balin was 5 years old. He told his biographer, Lawrence Bergreen, that he kept exactly one memory of Russia. He was lying on a blanket beside a road, watching his house burn to the ground. That is the entirety of what the man who wrote God Bless America remembered of Russia. And neither change happened on that island. Balin to Balin is documented nowhere. What is documented is that the family appears as Balin in the census of 1900. Ballin to Berlin came off a printing press. In 1907 he wrote the lyric to Marie from sunny Italy for a reported 33 cents, and the sheet music came back crediting I. Berlin. Whether that was a printer's error or a deliberate choice has never been settled. He kept it, and the I became Irving. God Bless America, White Christmas, Puttin' on the Ritz, the hymn book of a country, written by a man that country never once renamed. Check your tree. So what does the blood say, once the paperwork has failed? In most European traditions, the surname and the Y chromosome descend together, father to son, which is why surname DNA projects exist. The load-bearing study is Turi King and Mark Jobling at the University of Leicester, published in Molecular Biology and Evolution in 2009. 1,678 men across 40 British surnames. On average, 62% of men sharing a surname fell inside a single descent cluster, but the range ran from 87% down to 0. Rare names clustered tightly. Common names barely clustered at all. Two things break that link. Brian Sykes and Catherine Irvin at Oxford in 2000 studied men named Sykes and found nearly half carried one haplotype absent from the controls, the rest consistent with non-paternity at about 1.3% per generation. And a name change is functionally identical to non-paternity from the point of view of a surname project. Every one of these 15 families cut their surname free of their own Y chromosome deliberately in America. A test on a modern Bronson will match Buczynska's patrolines in Lithuania. Warhol's brothers stayed Warhola, so a Warhola study would find them and never find him, which is why autosomal testing, not Y testing, is the tool that solves these cases. One caution, and it is a large one. Shai Karmi and the Ashkenazi Genome Consortium in Nature Communications in 2014 sequenced 128 Ashkenazi genomes and modeled a bottleneck of only 250 to 420 individuals. Understand what that number is. It is a record of catastrophe, not of quality. Founder effects in endogamy are demographic accidents, never virtues. And endogamy inflates match lists badly, so treat your matches as a haystack and not a signpost. Compare Ireland, where people stayed put. Lois Moore and Daniel Bradley at Trinity College Dublin analyzed 796 Irish Y chromosomes, and one haplotype accounts for 16.9% of the Northwest. That is what a surname looks like when nobody renames themselves. Now, a fair and honest word, because this channel does not deal in wishful thinking. You cannot prove a negative for every family. Sutton, Canato, and Smith argue that the myth is impossible as usually told, and that is a claim about a system and its rules. It is not a certificate that no clerk anywhere ever wrote anything down wrong. Manifests do contain errors, but those errors were made in Europe by ticket agents, sometimes from the relative who paid the fare. Names could also be corrected on request, with a paper trail. A shared surname is a hypothesis, not a relationship, and the Act of 1924 set quotas at 2% of each nationality's population in the census of 1890. That law ranked nationalities. This video does not. The free places to go are these: Family Search for the New York passenger arrival lists, the Statue of Liberty and Ellis Island Foundation Passenger Search, Steve Morse's one-step pages, which carry the Dach Mokotov Soundex built for the Slavic and Yiddish names ordinary Soundex handles badly, Castle Garden for arrivals before 1892, where the Trump and Warner families actually are, Jewish Gen, and Alexander Bider's Dictionaries of Jewish Surnames. and the United States Citizenship and Immigration Service's genealogy program for naturalization files from 1906 onward, the one place a name change was genuinely written down. So let the names roll by one more time. Trumpf at Castle Garden 7 years too early, Wansel ashore at Baltimore, Gelbfis renamed by relatives in Birmingham and ashore at Philadelphia, Lauter becoming Lauder in a marriage, Johansson becoming Sandberg in a payroll office, Rockney, a farm that turned into a family, Ozimov, respelled by a father who misunderstood English, Benedetto, shortened in a nightclub, Kairouz, hidden behind a stage name, Boyardi, who spelled his name out for America, Buchinskas, surrendered to a political panic, Varcola, minus one letter, Anagnostopoulos, son of the man who reads aloud, Danielovich, renamed by an uncle, and Balin, handed a printer's abbreviation. Not one of them was renamed at a desk on that island. Every change was made by a family, an agent, a census taker, or a printer. The records were never the problem. The stories we told over the records were. So go and check your tree and check every spelling of it, because the name you are looking for is almost certainly still there, under a spelling nobody remembers.